You're listening to Atlanta Baseball Talk, your weekly podcast for all things Atlanta Braves.
Welcome to show number 285. Today is Tuesday, December 9th, 2014, and my name is Steve. No Hammy tonight, but I am joined by Curtis. Curtis, in tonight's show, we'll talk about the Callaspo signing, the non-tendering of Medlen and Beachy, and the Jim Johnson signing. But first, Kurt, on the last show, we talked about the Hayward trade, signifying the end of an era. But have no fear, Kurt, because last week brought the start of another era. The Nick Markakis era, 4 years long. The Braves signed the 31-year-old Baltimore Orioles right fielder to a 4-year, $44 million deal. So, Kurt, good deal or bad deal for the Braves?
I'm not 100% sure. It seems like it's value, I guess. I mean, it's what he would have been expected to get, so it's not that they overpaid for him. I just don't see the point. Reading John Hart's comments that they are not going to be rebuilding, and that this signing symbolizes their commitment to not rebuilding. I mean, I just if they had somehow found a way to shed BJ and kept Hayward and brought Nick Markakis into play right and were moving Hayward to center, I would be so excited, because I would be like, wow, what a great piece to add to the mix.
Right. But he's the big piece that they've added to the mix.
Because you don't want Nick Markakis being like the second or third best player on your team. You want him being like the sixth or seventh best player, especially at this point in his career. And he's a very nice player, has had a very solid career, can certainly contribute playing, the outfield corner position, obviously, that Hayward abandons, and then can lead off. But I mean, he won a Gold Glove, but he has no range. If he can get to it, he can get to it. He's got a nice arm. So we're going to lose a ton, and obviously we were going to anyway, lose a ton defensively. He has very little power. He doesn't strike out a lot. He has a decent OBP, which those are all the things the Braves need, and maybe he is going to be the example that they hope will be the guy to show the rest of the team how to get on base. But Mark Bradley called it a pricey half measure, and I think that is a pretty spot-on assessment of the Nick Markakis signing.
Yeah, there's really so much going on with this signing in my mind. So you've got the offense, and like you said, he's got a decent on-base, good strikeout rate. He doesn't strike out much. His power decline is scary. I saw a great article on Fangraphs that his batted ball distances have decreased each year, and he ranked 223rd and 228th his last 2 years in the majors. So don't expect a ton of power unless the neck surgery is really magical. We'll get to that in a minute.
Or they move the fences into the dirt line.
Yeah, exactly. His slash line last year was good in places, 276 batting average, 342 on base, ridiculous slugging at 386, back to his drop in power. Steamer projections have him at a slight decline in average and on base, small increase in slugging for next year. I mean, 4 years is too long. My God, the last 2 years of the contract, he's going to be... Right, he's 31 now, so 33 and 34. And those will be the first 2 years in the stadium. I mean, God, we really didn't want him for 4 years. Would have loved this signing much more at 2 years. You're right. He's won Gold Gloves, but he's Freddie Freeman. If he can get to it, he'll make great plays, but he doesn't have a lot of range. The money, Zips projects him at 1.3 WAR for the coming season, and a win is estimated at about $7 million, so the money is about on. He's a conservative signing, right? The thing to me that's interesting about this, and the Callaspo signing sort of points to it as well, is that it is clear that Hart and Bobby and Sherholtz, their heads were going to explode if they saw another strikeout from anyone new that they brought in here. You know, they're bringing in guys who are veterans. They can shore up that piece of leadership void in the clubhouse. Clearly, that's part of what they're paying for with Markakis. And they want contact guys. The question really with Markakis, with the power decline and the batted ball distance, is will the contact that he makes will it be of any value? And that remains to be seen. But they are very much paying for, we don't want to see strikeouts. We want leadership. We want to put the ball in play. I mean, that's what we're seeing signaled with this Markakis signing, don't you think?
Yeah, but that doesn't rectify all the guys that are still on this roster that strike out a ton.
Well, there's only so much they can do.
And of course, and I totally understand that. But I mean, bringing in one guy, I guess I'm just, and I understand where the Braves are coming from. But what is your, I don't know that we totally talked about this, but I mean, what is your take on what the Braves should do right now? Do you think they should just dump everything they can of value, including maybe even going to the point of getting rid of Kimbrel, to completely rebuild this team? And they're stuck because obviously they re-signed Freeman, they re-signed Simmons, they re-signed Johnson, for God's sake. They've got the BJ contract. So they have this money tied up in these players, and they can't just let it go to pot for 2 years and do nothing about it. Tayron Minor, all these young guys. But what would your approach be to this situation?
I don't want them to completely tank the next 2 years. For one thing, the fan base barely shows up when they're doing well. You know, I mean, They need to keep that sort of long-term playing for 2017 in place, because they need to keep selling tickets so that payroll doesn't go down. You know, Liberty's not going to care that much if tickets drop. And what I mean by that is they're not going to care and say, well, it'll come back in a couple of years and we'll give you more money for payroll, right? I think that they are concentrating on the pitching, because pitching keeps you in games. They've replaced right field with a contact guy. They're going to replace, an out. They're going to trade Justin. Now Gaddis goes there, so I don't know where those pieces go. I guess it's more pitching for Justin. They are certainly shopping Chris Johnson around. We've seen that the last couple of days from the winter meetings, that they've had conversations about Chris Johnson. I would feel really good if they get a good fifth starter to go along with Shelby Miller, and then we really have five good pitchers that way. If you have, gotten rid of Justin, gotten rid of Johnson, I really want them to get rid of Johnson. I think that if you have, a contact guy in right, a contact guy at third, BJ's not going to be around that long. There's going to be some answer in center field. I think that with some decent average batters plus good pitching, the team could compete. And I think that that's not a bad way to go. You?
No, and I think that's where they have to be, unfortunately. Yeah. Because of the commitments they've made to some of these guys. It was just weird how this offseason has gone with them, the Lester stuff and the Yasmani Tomas stuff and all this kind of, you seem like their name is popping up everywhere, and it's in dumping players and it's in signing players, and that they're going to trade for Samardzija and all this kind of stuff. And it just seems so scattered, I guess, is my thing. And maybe that is the situation with the team right now, is that there is no solvency to it. So they have to kind of figure out as they're going along here what the keys to solving the problem are. And I think it's going to take a while. I mean, yeah, they've got this core, but I think it's going to take a little while. I mean, certainly these guys that they're bringing in. I mean, Markakis is going to be a fine player, but of course, at the end of this contract, how good is he going to be as a 34-year-old?
Well, that's the thing. I think that they had to go 4 years to get him, and he was the type of veteran contact hitter who could show the guys in the clubhouse how to play. It was the splurge that they were willing to make to sort of help that clubhouse piece and help create some stability at the top of the lineup. I don't think it was the greatest signing in the world, but I don't think it's awful. Talk to me the last 2 years, it will probably feel a little worse then.
Well, and I think, I mean, you keep reading Hart continuing to make the comments that these guys are going to have to be better that play on this team, that they are going to have to start playing better. They're going to have to play the way they did a couple of years ago when they won so many games. And, Chris Johnson earned himself his well, I shouldn't say earned himself, snookered his way into his contract when Simmons was a much better hitter, at least numerically. So that's really, they're really, really counting on Seitzer coming in and changing a bunch of these guys and really kind of revamping the offense so these guys can kind of get back, and that's what they're really counting on too. So I guess as a Braves fan, you keep your fingers crossed and you say, well, I mean, if Simmons comes back and hits like he did a couple of years ago and Chris Johnson comes back and hits like he did a couple of years ago, and you have Gaddis hitting home runs and you have Markakis and you have Freeman and you have Betancourt, hopefully, that is a basis of a decent starting team.
Yeah, I will really be thrilled if they get something good for Justin, get rid of Johnson. I will be thrilled with that. And then over the moon if somehow they figure out how to get rid of BJ. Let's just get replacement level players in center and at third base who are not striking out 100 million times, grounding into a million double plays.
And costing us $76 million.
Yeah. Pair it up with the good starting pitching that it looks like we'll have. I think we can compete. Really want Johnson off the team. Have I mentioned that? Really, really want Chris Johnson off the team.
But no, wait a minute. Who?
Yeah, exactly. So, Kurt, a few days ago, word comes out that Markakis may get surgery on the herniated neck disc any day now. And it is, the reports when it was looking like the Braves were going to sign him, that it was a concern on the Orioles' part. Does that change your reaction to the signing, the fact that he may be recovering right up until the start of spring training?
No. I mean, I don't think it's going to have a big impact. I mean, if this had been 15 years ago when they were operating on his neck, I probably would have had bigger issues with it, but I think that they've come a long way in those types of surgeries. Like you said, it's not like he's some power guy or something like that. I don't know how much of an impact it's really going to have. You'd hate to hear about it and you're like, oh, it's already damaged goods, but I'm not super stressed out about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could convince myself that it could actually help return some of his power. I could also convince myself that at 31, when you get any sort of surgery, it's the start of, a litany of problems coming. But if he's going to do it, let's do it. I mean, like 4 or 5 days have passed now. Let's do it. I mean, the days are at a premium now.
Sure.
All right, so Kurt, today the Braves made another move, signing veteran infielder Alberto Caius. I'm so nervous saying his last name; it's all messed up. 1 year, $3 million deal. The indications are that he'll be the starting second baseman until Peraza is ready to take over. So, what do you think about this move? It looks like we have our second baseman.
Snore. I mean, I read some stuff today and the comments from some of the A's fans and their exuberance that he was not going to be back on their team after last season. This seems like Jose Constanza plays second base for us. So, I mean, he's had a couple of decent seasons. But this is. Yeah, I mean, I saw somewhere that they were talking about Stephen Drew a couple of days ago. A couple of days ago.
I'm really glad they didn't do that.
So at least it's not Stephen Drew. But
right, it's cheap. It's 1 year. He's a switch hitter, but he's much better lefty batting against right-handed pitching. I wonder if he platoons with Gosselin. I mean, I didn't see that today, but he's a much better lefty batter. Gosselin bats righty. DOB tweeted today that he's never struck out as many as 60 times in a season. He has more walks than strikeouts in 4 of his past 7 seasons. So again, it's this mold. It's the kind of guy that Hart wants to bring in. Contact guy, low strikeout. Let's put the ball in play and pair that up with our good pitching. I mean, that's what they're doing.
Is he our leadoff hitter?
Markakis certainly is more traditional a second, 2-hole hitter than a 1-hole.
Which we also don't have. So
right, right, exactly. So right, because you'd rather see Simmons in the 7, BJ in the 8. That
you mean BJ on the bench?
Well, for the first month at least, we're going to see him. Yeah, it could be Callaspo, Markakis, 1 and 2.
Well, did you see that?
Thought about that.
The DOB blog today that he had talked to Hart because I guess he's getting so many people asking him about what their plan on it is for the offense, and he wanted to get it down on paper so he would have to stop giving his interpretation of it. And Hart basically made a comment that was, this is the roster we have, but that doesn't mean these are the starters that we're going to have. So read into that what you will, basically saying BJ has no guarantee that he will ever play. We have to pay him, and he's still stuck on our payroll, but that doesn't mean he's going to be the starting center fielder every single day if he's going to be a complete and utter dumpster fire as he's been the last couple of years.
Well, I mean, if he's on the 25-man, though, he'll be the opening day center fielder.
Yeah, but I mean, his leash might be as short as it possibly can be.
Absolutely. And Callaspo, another not a young guy. He'll be 32 in April next year. So Hart is targeting old contact hitters, it appears. All right, so a couple quick announcements. All of our new shows are now also available on our new YouTube channel, which you can find by searching Atlanta Baseball Talk. And once you find it, subscribe. Also, we have a new Facebook fan page. Go out there and like us. It's at facebook.com/Atlanta Baseball Talk. So, Kurt, the other big news last week was that the Braves non-tendered both Chris Medlen and Medlen Beachy. So they are now both free agents available to negotiate with any team. So the question here is, was that the right move? And I'll start. A big part of what played into it, right, was that once you've been through arbitration, you have to make at least 80% of the prior year's salary, which means that Medlen would have been guaranteed $4.6 million, Beachy $1.1 million. I was very surprised to see that the Braves actually offered Medlen like $5.8 to come back. But then 2016 there was not going to be that that kind of guarantee was not going to be there. I'm equally or maybe more surprised that Medlen turned it down, frankly. So I think this was the right move. I mean, I won't be surprised if they continue to negotiate with them and try to bring them back at a much lower guaranteed salary and a lot of incentives. To me, that's the thing to do with Medlen. Like Medlen, I just wouldn't be surprised that he's the kind of guy that is able to come back. Not a power pitcher. Just seems like a great guy, gutsy, really wants it, blah, blah, blah. Like, I would pay Medlen $1 or $2 million with a bunch of incentives.
And he can pitch out of the bullpen, too.
Absolutely. I saw a tweet a few days ago. This was right before the winter meeting started, that 10 teams were in on Beachy, which I just have trouble believing.
Yeah, me too. That must be PR from his agent.
Yeah, I guess. But any heartburn about non-tendering them?
No, I mean, it's certainly the right move. They don't have the money to throw down dual Tommy John pitching arms.
Yeah, what on earth were they thinking with that 5.8 to Medlen? They must really.
I totally missed that, and I'm even more surprised maybe than you are that he turned it down. How does he turn that money down?
Yeah, he must be. I mean, obviously he's confident that he will get a deal somewhere, but it's very confusing to me. The other move last week was that the Braves signed former Orioles closer Jim Johnson to a 1-year, $1.6 million deal. He was awful, Kurt, for the A's and the Tigers last year. He had a 7.09 ERA in 53 innings. he signed for $10 million with the A's last year and was a complete disaster. So good signing for 1.6.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? I mean, the guy had 50 saves a couple of years ago. So the talent is there. It's just, and, the Braves are notorious for salvaging pitchers. So even if you get a semblance of that out of the guy, Walden was having location problems before he came over here. That was one of the reasons he was available. There's a history of these types of guys that the Braves have brought in, even the younger guys like David Carpenter, who, was flopping around and why not for $1 million? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith in Roger. I can get behind the narrative that low pressure city, not the closer, 7th or 8th inning guy, start him in the 7th. Maybe he becomes your Walden. It would be great, right? If he can regain any of that form, he'll be a great signing and a great piece in the 8th inning as a bridge to Kimbrel. So I can believe it.
Yeah, and you got Vizcaino in the mix too, trying to come back. So, there's some potential there. There's a lot of potential there. It's just a matter of who, and they might be just kind of taking some shots on some of these guys and seeing if anything comes from any of them. Well,
there's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. And again, it's why these not very exciting offensive pieces, but who, at least, Callaspo I'd rather have than Ugla, right? Markakis, I'm not saying, obviously I would like to have Hayward, but Markakis at least will be solid. We're adding a couple of more solid pieces, and Markakis will hit lefties better than Hayward did. In that regard, he will be a little more steady. The pitching should be very good. I stand behind that. And if people, if Tehran and Minor and, oh my God, I can't think of his name.
Wood,
yeah. Progress and
same with Shelby Miller.
Right, yeah, Shelby Miller. It'll be a very stout starting rotation. The bullpen could be nice. These pieces, again, just think about if the offense was even average last year. We would have won the NL East.
Oh, sure. Going away.
Yeah.
Well, it's back to the Atlanta ifs,
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, and more ifs than we've seen in a couple of years. So, Kurt, prediction. This is Tuesday night, so a couple more days of the winter meetings. You think Justin is traded before the winter meetings conclude?
No, I think it's shortly thereafter, though.
Before the new year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to get something in place, if not done, before these meetings. It'll be interesting. Hart is certainly very public, because you see Ken Rosenthal tweet about it. You see John Heyman tweet about it, that we don't want to trade Gaddis, but if we get blown away, we will. Which means they'd be happy to trade Gaddis if they could.
It means blow them away.
Yeah, exactly.
Or come sort of close and blow wind in their ear.
But yeah, I think Justin, the Justin move is imminent. And we'll be back when that happens. And Kurt, that's the show. So again, we'll be back throughout the offseason as the Braves make moves. And make sure you subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, as well as on iTunes or Stitcher, so that you don't miss any of our shows. As always, check us out at AtlantaBaseballTalk.com for past shows, to check out our blogs, and to post in our comments section. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at ATL Baseball Talk, and again, to like us on Facebook. Thanks again for listening, everyone, and go Braves!
Thanks for listening to Atlanta Baseball Talk, your weekly podcast for all things Atlanta Braves. To find new shows, to post in our forum, or to send a comment, please visit us at AtlantaBaseballTalk.com.